affirmative sound as she worked on her PC. Old money, timber and wheat. Then Ken Larson tripled it in high tech. Used to hire us regular back before '96, but not lately. Hasn't brought the family before. Havel nodded again. He'd only been flying for Steelhead since the spring of '97. It was nice to know that Dan trusted him, but then he was damned good if he said so himself, which he didn't. Not aloud, anyway. He went through into the office. Dan Fogarty was sitting and chatting with the clients, while Gerda worked behind piles of paper on the desk. There were wilderness posters and models of old bush planes and books on Idaho and the Northwest on shelves, and a faint meowing. That was unusual. The Larsons' youngest had a cat carrier on her lap. The beast's bulging yellow eyes shone through the bars, radiating despair and outrage. It wasn't taking the trip well. Cats seldom did, being little furry Republicans with an inbuilt aversion to change. From an ammonia waft, it was, literally, pissed off. The kid was unusual as well. All huge silver-blue eyes and long white-blonde hair, dressed in some sort of medieval-looking suede leather outfit, her nose in a book, an illustrated Tolkien with a tooled leather cover. She had an honest-to-God bow in a case leaning against her chair and a quiver of arrows. She kept her face turned to the print, ignoring him. He'd been raised to consider that sort of behavior impolite, but then she was probably used to ignoring the chauffeur, and his family hadn't had many employees. Havel grinned at the thought. His dad had worked the Iron Range mines from the day he got back from Vietnam and got over a case of shrapnel acne picked up at Khe Sanh. His father had done the same after getting back from a tour of Pacific beauty spots like Iwo Jima in 1945. His father had done the Belleau Wood Tour de France in 1918 before settling down to feed the steel mills. And his father had gone straight into the mines after arriving from Finland in 1895. When the mines weren't hiring, the Havel men cut timber and worked the little farm the family had acquired around the turn of the century, and did any sort of honest labor that fell their way. Kenneth Larson matched the grin and stood, extending a hand. It was soft, but strong. The man behind it was in his late 50s, which made him twice Mike Havel's age. Graying blonde ponytail, shoulders still massive, but the beard got straining at his expensive leather jacket. Square, ruddy face smiling. "Ken Larson," he said. "Pleased to meet you, Mr. Larson. Havel's the name. Mike Havel." "Sorry to drag you out so late in the day. Dan tells me you were on vacation." Havel shrugged. "It's no trouble. I wouldn't be bush flying out of Boise for a living if I didn't like it." That brought a chuckle. You can see he's the type who likes to smile, Havel thought. But he hasn't been doing a lot of it just lately, and that one's a fake. "Midwest?" Larson said shrewdly. That was a lot to pick up from a few words. "Minnesota? Got some Svenska in there? We're Swedes ourselves on my side of the family." Not much of a surprise with a moniker like that, Havel thought. Aloud, he went on. "Not too far off, both times. Michigan, Upper Peninsula, the Iron Range. Finn, mostly, on my father's side. Lot of Swede in Mom's father's family. And her mother was Ojibwe, so I'm 1/4. He ran a hand over his jet-black hair. Purebred American mongrel. "Havel's an odd name for a Finn," Larson said. "Czech, isn't it?" "Yeah. When my great-grandfather got to the Iron Range about 100 years ago, the mine's bohunk pay clerk heard Mili Harju and said right then and there, 'From now on your name is Havel.' That got a real laugh. Signe Larson looked charming when she smiled. "My wife Mary," Larson went on, and did the introductions. Her handshake was brief and dry. Mary Larson was about 40, champagne-colored hair probably still natural, so slim she was almost gaunt. She had the same wide-eyed look as her younger daughter, except that it came across as less like an elf and more like an overbred collie, and her voice was pure Back Bay Boston, so achingly genteel that she didn't unclench her teeth even for the vowels. That accent reminds me of Captain Stoddard, Havel thought.